Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Shinetsky. Joining us today, longtime industry veteran and the CEO and founder of NutraShure, leading ingredient house in the supplement industry, Mr. Brandon Sojka. Brandon, long time in the
Awesome,
making.
Rob.
I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, likewise. This is fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show, and looking forward to having a nice conversation.
Absolutely. Anytime I have a first-time guest on the show, I'd like to get a little bit of their history because we always come from very disparate backgrounds, but we all call this crazy world that is the supplement industry home. So, how did you make your way into the industry?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I was an athlete my whole life, and I was always like super fascinated in nutrition and exercise, and yeah, I mean, even when I was in high school, I started to really get into supplements, and I got fascinated into it. Went to college. It's funny. My first semester, I was technically going for electrical engineering, and thought it was incredibly boring and not up to par. So, with what I enjoyed doing, I switched my major to exercise science. So my undergrad degree is in exercise science. I I took random classes like pharmacology. Didn't even apply to my major just because I was so fascinated on that side of the ingredient space.
Yeah.
I would be doing my own. I'd spend like hours, and I'd skip class and spend hours like doing research on random ingredients and stuff. So try to get a job at GNC as a part-time sales associate in college, and applied to like a bunch of different places. Finally got accepted, and
Mhm.
that's kind of was rest is history. That's how I got my start in the space, and that was almost 20 years ago. And I've been in the space from from GNC, even in the stores, to senior management there. I've had my own sports nutrition brand. I was the founder and CEO of MyoChem. I sold the company back in 2016, coming up on 7-year anniversary of that, which
Mhm.
is crazy to think it was that long ago now. It feels like yesterday. But I've been on the ingredient space, contract manufacturing side. I do consulting now as well. With some large brands and some smaller brands as well, helping with supply chain management, product formulation. Yeah, you name it. I've kind of touched this industry in almost every point of it throughout my career so far. So.
What was it that led you to decide you actually wanted to start your own brand? Have you always had an entrepreneurial bug inside of you? Because
Yeah.
you had GNC and then you went to say, "Hey, let's start Myochem up." So how did that idea percolate?
Yeah, I'm not a good employee. Let's just put it that way. So, I'm definitely I have an entrepreneurial spirit. My passion is like, I come up with wild and crazy ideas, and I I don't like to move slow.
Mhm.
And I've tend to find that when I'm in the employee type role, things just end up, whether that's a conflict with a superior, or it's not that I'm like a combative person. It's just, a lot of times what ends up happening is I want to go, and I
Yeah.
want to do it, and I don't like to have a lot of hurdles. Maybe it's the fact that I just enjoy being in control. But um that's just been, I see spots for market opportunities, and
Mhm.
try to capitalize on it. And like I said, with being in an employee role, I'm limited on the ability to be able to capture those opportunities. So being in the more entrepreneurial role, even consultant role, I can
Mhm.
either one, jump on the opportunity myself, or help advise other brands to see that opportunity as well.
Yeah, we share a great many things in common as far as our approach to work, because that was one of the things in previous or listeners of the previous podcast episodes will know that one of the things that irked me about the consulting side of oil and gas engineering is that they build, Shell, Chevron, whatever, 6 to 8 hours for a project. I'd be finished it in two. I'd bring it to the lead, or, you know, the project manager, whatever, and they say, well, we build them, we've got 4 more hours, go back and stare at it for 2 more. I'm not going to do that because I've already double checked before I brought it to you in the first place. So that gave me plenty of time to start researching all kinds of supplement science. That was kind of the gateway for me to eventually transition into this industry. So it's always nice to meet somebody of a similar mindset.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Fast forwarding to the founding of NutraShure, what was the impetus for that, and how did you decide on the name? And, you know, given your history, why not start another sports nutrition brand, and why go for the ingredient house or start up your own manufacturing facility since you have experience in all these different avenues?
Yeah. So, you know, what after the acquisition with Myochem,
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much specialized on everything behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That's why you probably don't see that I'm on social media that much. So, you know, I do a lot of my work behind the scenes. You know, I have enjoyed working on the contract manufacturing and the formulation side. You know, the market has evolved so much on the brand side in terms of marketing and such, and
Yeah.
I to be quite frank, I just couldn't keep up with that. I also felt that the innovation on especially sports nutrition has kind of like slowed down a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and this also comes back to the ingredient space, right? Like a lot of sports nutrition has kind of, you know, innovation is really not taken to the new level. You're not seeing as many new ingredients as frequently, and I think part of that is also just, you know, the FDA starting to crack down more than, you know, say back in 2011, 2012, 20
Mm-hmm.
through probably 2015. You know, it was a little bit more open-ended on what you could bring to market. You know, it's a little bit more restrictive now, just with more eyeballs watching it. So, you know, I got into starting NutraShure. Like I said, I worked on the ingredients side. I was actually approached. It's funny. Dr. Hector Lopez and I worked very closely together, and he, it was almost like we were thinking on the same wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I'd love to bring some new IP to market or commercialize something new and whatnot. And I get a random phone call from Hector, and he's like, hey, you know, have you ever thought about starting your own ingredient distribution company? And I was like, well, yeah, actually, just very recently, just, you know, I'd already started like formulating that idea. And he's like, well, hey, I have a unique opportunity. This is a ingredient that you know, I have a partnership with. You know, the CEOs and kind of the brainchild behind this ingredient was Dr. Ryan Yates. And you know, I'm helping him with that, and you know, we're kind of looking for you know, ingredient distributor, and we could really use someone like yourself to help kind of, you know, take this to the market. And you know, so that was almost 2 years ago, April of 2021. Well, actually, you know, the ideation of it happened probably about 2 years of, you know, by the time we actually formulated and got everything together in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, bringing a company together. You know, that it was about April of 2021 that we launched. So, excuse me. And, you know, kind of came up with a name, you know, in terms of, you know, what we find a lot of times with ingredients too is, you know, quality is always of concern, right? And, you know, we wanted to make sure that, you know, you're assured of having an ideal supplier. You know, we want to basically make sure that, you know, what we do and what we bring to market is of high quality.
Mm-hmm.
It is innovation. And while, yes, maybe, you know, for example, 3D Pump and, you know, realistically, SmartPrime are blend, you know, complexes that are not, you know, you see each of those individual ingredients on the market already. It's the, you know, ability to bring those together in synergy and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, bringing unique concepts to market. So I was all on board with it. You know, and you know, our portfolio was pretty much almost exclusively Smart Prime until it was September of last year, and that's when we officially did our first batch run of Caraflame and got that up. And then now going into 2023, we have 6 ingredients, and there's more on the way. As if you heard from Bruce's podcast with you last week, there's multiple ingredients with him, and other people as well too that we're in discussions with.
Yeah, and since you brought up Bruce, he was very, very complimentary of your business acumen and your drive, as if you tuned in and heard it. Very complimentary, and hopefully he didn't steal any of the thunder from your appearance on the podcast. But
I think he was probably stroking me a little more than he probably should, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool to see that the merging of these two, because for the listeners, they know that Bruce is one of the masterminds behind 3D Pump, along with Dr. Ziegenfuss and Dr. Hector Lopez. And they said, they like to focus on the ingredient nerdy science kind of stuff of it. And you've really got that smart business acumen where you can just take the ball and run with it and facilitate those and, kind of grease the wheels on everything to make it a smoother end result for all the consumers that will be ultimately using your products, whether it's brands or individuals that may be able to pick it up as a bulk ingredient if it's sold as part of a standalone supplement or whatnot. So,
yeah.
Do you find that the marketing approach of an ingredient house is different than that of a sports nutrition brand? And what unique challenges are there for that?
Yeah. So, when you look at with marketing on the ingredient space, right? Mm-hmm. And I know one of my very good friends who I actually have a call with in a few hours, who will argue with me on this point. The thing is, like, you're dealing with a lot of, especially with the larger companies, you're dealing with PhDs or masters of nutrition or biochemistry and such, and you have to have some substantiation, whether that's mechanistic claims or at least some sort of verifiable reason to use it, especially anything new. You need to have, you yourself have to have a good acumen in terms of the science behind stuff. Like myself, I'm currently a PhD student in nutrition. It's a personal side project of my own. So you can't, it's not just simply like, hey, I got a really cool brand. I mean, yes, that helps, right? Of course, if you get your logo on somebody's label and you get it on a big brand, it gains exposure for the brand. I think that's part of it, but it's not the end all be all, right? There has to be some sort of substantiation. And it's funny, I actually had a call with Dr. Z, or people who know him more personally call him TZ. This morning, actually, we were talking about Beta Prime specifically, and we had some ideas of some different target categories besides what the patent is about. Through some of my own research and substantiation on it, I was like, hey, we should actually consider it in this category. And he's like, well, do you think that if we did this type of study, it's in terms of economic barriers much lower? If we did something like that, does that have any valid benefits? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because again, where are your conversations? Your conversations are more behind the scenes anyways, Correct. Now, on the flip side, where the branding side makes a lot of sense is, right, the consumer starts to understand it. One that I'll give a huge amount of credit to is Compound Solutions with T-Cream. So what's funny is that there are more searches for T-Cream, the brand, than the actual compound name itself, Theacrine. Yeah. So, that's a company who's done an excellent job of building a brand behind it. And I guarantee that there's way more searches for Dynamine than methylliberine, right? So
absolutely.
Anybody, you hear methylliberine, you think, oh man, this is some sort of drug, even though it's just essentially a chemical cousin to caffeine. But this is that's a company who's done an excellent job on the branding side and getting consumer awareness behind it. So I think it's a blend of both. But I think especially this involves a lot of B2B business. You have to understand the economic side of it, right? Like, what is the cost implication per unit that you're going to have to deal with? Is there economies of scale for it? You have to know the science behind it, and you have to have substantiation. So it's a different, it's definitely, it's hard to make that, kind of, if you're a brand, trying to do that type of marketing, versus on the flip side, B2B, trying to do consumer based, it's a fine balance, right? So, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts with marketing on, ingredients. It's a lot of more of the business stuff and the science side than it is just the simple branding part.
Gotcha. Now, I know you have you'll have Caraflame, SmartPrime, and 3D Pump Breakthrough that are officially you've just mentioned on this podcast. We know that there's several more in the works. I don't know if we can mention those, but outside of those stable of ingredients that are already, kind of greenlit in your mind that you're going to be bringing to the market under NutraShure, what burden of proof do you need to see for an ingredient before you would consider bringing that branded thing under the NutraShure label? Because as a previous consumer and as a brand owner, you might be a little bit more experimental with saying, hey, I'll be okay trying this ingredient or putting it in my product. But now that you are, at the forefront of bringing new ingredients and new IP to the market, how big of a burden of proof do you need to see, or how high is that barrier to entry for something to get your seal and the company seal of approval to say we're standing behind this 100%? Is it the researchers conducting the study? Is it your experience with the ingredient? Is it a body of evidence? Give us a little bit of that in your thought process.
So for me, it's one of the biggest things is what kind of novel mechanism of action. I'll use SmartPrime, and this is what really I lit up when Hector brought the opportunity to me. It's just the direction of what SmartPrime is doing. Right. Again, nothing, the two ingredient blend, you've seen them. They're, I'm pretty sure you can easily say that they both fall under ODI. But it's what they do together that makes a lot of sense. Like, Dr. Ryan Yates and I actually had a pretty long hour and 15-minute conversation earlier this week, just going over the science and even just like, hey, this is kind of our direction. This is where we're going. And just that, if you actually look into Delta 5 desaturase enzyme in terms of like, there's like research for in the pharma world, for anti-cancer, and what's really, really unique about it is just this, it's a completely different thought process behind omega-3. We've had this conversation, internally. Omega-3 index is great. Like, it's great for a consumer to understand, but that's not really at the end of the day, the target goal of what SmartPrime is for. And you look at it, you have where, with that ingredient, you come up with something so novel and so new to the point of which, it was patentable, or patent pending it currently still. But, something like that, that's what I look for. I don't need necessarily the scientific substantiation out of the gates, right? Okay. You come to me, you say, hey, here's some substantiation that is suggesting this direction, this mechanism of action. This is what we're ultimately trying to target. And, let's create something. Let's make sure that it's defensible. I think, Bruce makes a really good point. On his episode last week with you about how if it's not patentable, then it's, really not really worth a lot. Because then, you get knockoffs left and right. Like there's plenty of suppliers out there who are going to just jump at the bit. I mean, as he mentioned, we already had a situation with 3D Pump, people trying to knock that off. Yeah. But it's got to be something novel, something patentable, and from there, the next piece that's more business part is you have to be a good partner. It's a partnership. And I think that's one of the challenges that I've seen a lot is some IP holders, none so far, knock on wood, that I've worked with, but directly, but historically, I've seen it happen where the IP holder, standing very high above everybody else, and my IP is what matters first and foremost, and they don't want to partner, really. They don't want to make sacrifices and invest into the research. Oh, we want to invest into research, but only when you get the sales up. Well, we need research to help with facilitating sales. So and then hold you to certain volume expectations, but yet they don't want to contribute on their end. Oh, we don't want to spend any money on marketing or help assist on marketing. Oh, we don't want to assist on the research and development. And then and then what I see some IP holders do that I think is not ideal, and is they put priority of, because they want to start their own brand, because they're like, oh, well, I have such novel IP that I'm going to start my own brand and I'm going to have it protected. But and they take preferential treatment. I watched this happen, previously, where the ingredient was far exceeding what the brand itself was doing. Yeah. We had some very awesome opportunities with a major CPG company that would have helped build the name of the ingredient, which would ultimately raise the market awareness of the ingredient, thus raising their brand. Yeah. And they were like, no, we're not going to let you sell to them because we're in the same retailer, and that's a conflict with our own brand. And I was like, you just shot yourself in the foot. I go, this is a brand who has been around for years. Their brand equity is far beyond what yours is, and it would only elevate the market and help you. Yeah. And instead, you selfishly looked at it as, well, now I'm going to be competing with them, and my direct brand sales weren't going to do as well. So I think it's something that, if you're an IP holder, you have to be very cognizant of. Like, I'm not against you starting your own brand, but think like the saying goes, rising tides raise all ships. So if the market awareness of an ingredient, because other brands out there are using it, especially ones that have a heck of a lot of brand recognition, that's only going to help you. And you got to look at your own brand as just a cherry on top.
Agreed. Along that line of rising tide lifts all the ships, how do you view the other ingredient houses? We don't have to get into specific names or anything like that, but what is just the general mindset of, I guess, and you can't speak for other ingredient houses, but your view of them, or is it y'all are all working to uplift the quality and the effectiveness, the supportive benefits, we'll use the proper terminology so we don't get in trouble with the FDA, of ingredients to the market? Or is it more of a, hey, I want to make sure I get my hands on this kind of IP or this ingredient before this other ingredient house does it? Is it more competitive? Is it more like, hey, we're all in this together, just trying to bring the best ingredients possible, ensure safe and effective ingredients for everybody?
I mean, I think it's funny. I kind of coined the phrase of we're frenemies, and it's very rare that, at least from my experience, that you get into this bidding war over who's going to get the IP first, right? Yeah. It's a lot of times it's usually a strategic partnership with, a contact or network that you have, or a fan of your company, and they come to you with some novel IP and whatnot. Look, it's competition, right? Like, there's going to be competition, but there's enough formulation work in the space that you can't have everything. Otherwise you'd end up having a portfolio of over 100 branded ingredients, mind you, not just. And so I use Compound Solutions ingredients, New Live ingredients, Nutrition 21 ingredients, in a lot of my formulations. And then others, Maypro, trying to think of some of the other ones, GenCore Pacific, I use, if it's good, it's got good, solid research. It fits within its complementary role within a formulation. I don't really care necessarily who the supplier is. So good for them. And, that they were able to secure the IP. It's not like I'm trying to go to their, ingredient IP holder, like, hey man, I want to distribute it. Screw them. No, it's not like that. I like to look, my goal is to improve the quality of formulations on the market. And if that means using, one of my competitors' ingredients, then so be it. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay. Currently there's probably 5 or 6 ingredients on the arsenal that'll be coming to market soon within NutraShure. Do you have an upper cap that you want to see? Like, hey, I not that you want to limit yourself, but you can only focus on building up so many ingredients in your portfolio and giving them their due attention to bring them to market. Is there kind of an upper limit beyond which you think maybe we might be spreading ourselves a little too thin, or may not be, we could be more investing in building out the body of research, be like giving a bigger body of research to all of the other ingredients we currently have before bringing something else into the stable?
So what's great about a lot of the licensing agreements that I have. So full disclosure, NutraShure does not own any IP that we currently have. It has some advantages and it also has some disadvantages. Enterprise value will go up if we start to own some IP, which is a goal of mine, but it's not a primary focus at this point. So what's great about the licensing agreements that I have is, R&D is, towards research for building out those specific ingredients ultimately depends on the success of each individual ingredient. In a couple of them, the IP holders themselves are responsible for financially supporting the R&D side of it. So in that regard, I'm not as concerned about, we could focus more of our R&D time into, novel research for each specific ingredient. I think where, to your point, we could, start to spread ourselves too thin. If we don't have enough marketing power behind something, I don't know what that upper limit necessarily would be. I think it's going to be on a case by case basis. I also don't want to be pigeonholed to a single ingredient. I think it exposes you to, potential, like, let's say performance declines, or you're not hitting those, target metrics that your agreement has, and that gives the IP holder the right to walk away. And you just spend all this time and effort building this brand up, and then it walks on you. And we've seen that happen with certain ingredients out there. So, I don't want to be pigeonholed to, one ingredient, but I also, I don't want to be spread so thin. I don't want to get to a point of where I'm competing with myself. So I definitely don't want to select ingredients that, really kind of fall in the same category, unless it's a, again, mechanism of action difference that makes it complementary to the portfolio. So, I think probably in the 15-ish ingredient, again, depends on the growth and the maturity of the company too. Right. Like, I think we're kind of, with what we have in the portfolio and what we have coming, I think we're probably good for at least the next 24 months, in terms of building out the pipeline and, not spreading ourselves too thin. Again, that said, anything can change. Some of the stuff that's happened, right at the end of 2022 going into 2023 were unfortunately or unfortunately, were facilitated in the passing of Dr. Hector Lopez. So that kind of, these were things that were already in discussion, but it kind of helped expedite that, to help those IP holders kind of pick up where at least on the branding side and the distribution side that Hector was fulfilling.
When you're building out the portfolio, I know your background is primarily athletics and sports nutrition. And as we've seen, 3D Pump Breakthrough is primarily positioned for sports nutrition. But if you think about increased nitric oxide productions, cellular hydration, blood flow, that has downstream benefits beyond muscle pumps, increased stamina performance, and all that. Obviously, SmartPrime is a general health and wellness ingredient, as is Caraflame and some of the other stuff that's coming down. Do you see yourself staying more focused on sports nutrition, maybe those ingredients that surround that, like joint support, or do you maybe expand beyond that into like cognitive health with nootropics, anti-aging supplements like that? The whole NMN, NAD realm is starting to get really busy, although the FDA is maybe crunching down on NMN supplements a little bit. So that it's a little murky. But where do you kind of see NutraShure going, 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, the focus is actually more human optimization. So it kind of falls like in between the two. Look, I think every single one of us can get better every single day, right? And I think finding ways to optimize that. So whether that's you want to run, take 30 seconds off your mile, or maybe it's, I want to drop my blood pressure, 10 points, drop my cholesterol, 15, 20 points, et cetera. I think that's the direction that I want to take it. Is more optimization for health, wellness, and fitness. So I'm not really, and if you look at the market anyways, sports nutrition is transitioning to more of an active lifestyle anyways. It's not as much the hardcore bodybuilding brands. It's you're starting to see there, especially like the aging millennial population is starting to care more and more about their overall well-being and longevity. And, there's this whole health span versus lifespan situation, and how can we prolong the health span, and still staying active. Right. And part of longevity is living an active lifestyle. So you kind of have to merge the two together. At my age, I'm now caring more and more about, the wellness. Like I get blood work every 3 months. I actually just had my blood drawn yesterday, waiting on the results. But, looking for optimization ways that way. So through my diet, one of my primary focus in my research as a PhD student is on, chronic low grade inflammation. I'm a big believer that inflammation is a root cause for, the vast majority of chronic diseases, aging, and I look at aging as more of a disease than it is, a foregone conclusion. I think there's ways that we can continue to improve upon that and extending life, through optimization, through our health, through nutrition, through exercise, through dietary supplements, et cetera. So,
just for reference, how old are you?
Coming up on 37.
Okay, I'll be 38 in August, so I'm 37 and I guess half today.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, no, I went to the dentist this morning and they said, all right, well, we'll schedule your next appointment. They said, that's in 6 months. How does August 9th sound? And that's my birthday. I said, well, it's a good way to start the day, right? You show up at the dentist. I wouldn't be doing anything else at 8:30 in the morning anyway. So it works.
Nice.
Yeah, I need to do blood work. It's been a minute since I've had it done. So I probably should.
Yeah, I do the membership with Life Force, and you get a full panel every 3 months. And what's nice is you get the phlebotomist coming to your house directly and draw your blood, and you get your results in a day or two. So pretty cool, and those formulations are pretty top notch. So Hector was the formulator for those, and so they're pretty substantial formulas out there.
Okay, I'll need to look at that. That's not something he may have told me that in the past, or I don't recall it, or there's just got lost in them. I'm gonna have to look into that then, because that beats the hell out of having to go to Quest Diagnostics and do that and then get your results in a week or two, like I used to do way back, 5-6 years ago when I was living in Louisiana. All right, transitioning away from strictly business stuff to your personal supplement regimen, diet, lifestyle. So you've always been an athlete. You are focused on human optimization, as you just said. So give us a little bit of insight into your Not, if you're obviously your diet's going to fluctuate a little bit from one day to the next, even if you're a pretty consistent eater. But what's the average food plan look for you, like daily supplement regimen? Favorite kind of pre-workouts that you gravitate towards? Are you caffeine sensitive? Not caffeine sensitive?
Well, I'll start there. I am definitely not caffeine sensitive, so I have no problem. I ingest probably around 500. It depends. It could be 300 to 500 milligrams of caffeine a day.
Okay.
I really am fascinated by all of the tech toys that come with health. So I'm an avid Aura Ring user. I also use the Lumen metabolic device. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I use that daily. And look at diet optimization that way. In terms of supplementation, I have a pretty big regimen. So I use a lot of Life Force products, actually. Another one that I really enjoy, and it's actually cool. And what's nice when you have like tech, like you can actually see tangible improvements between the blood work that I have done every 3 months. The Aura Ring that can give me like a daily snapshot of, how am I recovering, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then, the Lumen device, seeing how my metabolism is changing, on a daily basis too. But I was, tracking, I looked at, okay, here's where I was, in October, actually September, October, part of November. I don't really count end of November, December. I had a really rough patch with after Hector passed.
Right.
So health wise, I didn't want to compare data then. So I looked at it, in January, and I compared, okay, so here's my regimen is the same as what it was in September, October, November timeframe. I'm going to add this other supplement, which is Daily by Parable, which is a long-term brain care product. And I started adding that to my post-workout protein shakes, just for simplicity. I'm not a coffee drinker. And I had a noticeable and verifiable improvement in my readiness score of 4 points on average for the entire month.
Interesting.
Of October versus January.
Yeah.
And actually February, so far, obviously we're only 8 days in, but February is actually up another 4 points. So I went from, where my best month was a 77 average readiness score to January's was an 81. And right now I'm sitting at February at an 85. And that was the only thing that I had changed in my protocol. So definitely love that product, especially for long-term brain care is really important to me. I lost my grandfather last year due to Parkinson's, but and my grandma is now starting to suffer early stage dementia, which is it really hits home close to home. So, so I started using that. I absolutely love. I personally saw. And again, this is all anecdotal, so take it for what it's worth. But I saw a 26% drop in my total cholesterol from the use of SmartPrime, to the point of which my total cholesterol is actually too low. So I actually had to start consuming more fats to try to get my cholesterol level back up. This was in a 3-month period of time. And that was a pretty substantial drop. Obviously an N of 1, and I can't entirely attribute to SmartPrime, but based off of literature review and what I was taking at the time, pretty much narrowed it down to that. So that was a substantial improvement, so that's kind of like my day in terms of nutrition and stuff. Training wise, I do mixed martial arts. Striking wise, I do karate. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I was a wrestler my whole life, so I love fight sports. and I love football too. So those are my two like go-to sports. And then obviously I do my own weight training and stuff. I actually built out a nice gym at my house. So, which is nice. You get to wake up and just roll out of bed and go straight to the gym.
Yeah, we've been doing the home gym thing for, I don't know, almost 10 years now. We just slowly added it when we first started getting into resistance training, and it's much nicer. Like every now and then it's nice to go to a gym.
Mm-hmm.
But having the stuff right here in your house so you can do it whenever, is if a meeting gets pushed or you got to do something else, you can rearrange things much easier and save a ton of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's the part that's and we're gonna have to put like one of those split units of AC heat in because we built in the garage because it's frigid cold in the morning, and a little tiny space heater doesn't do a great job. I mean, I think the highest temperature we get it to is to like maybe like 54.
Ooh, that's still. So I like cold weather, and that's still brisk.
Yeah, so barbells and the dumbbells are freezing cold and whatnot, but I make do with it. And I train, do weight training 3 days on, 1 day off.
Mm-hmm.
I spar 3 days a week if I'm not traveling. Travel obviously throws that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I do personally.
Okay. You said you probably need to start eating more dietary fat based on the drastic drop in total cholesterol you had. Well, how much fat do you think, just rough estimate, that you'd get on a daily basis? Do you eat a lot of fatty foods in general, or do you eat pretty lean?
So my fats vary. Again, to be honest, I follow the Lumen device pretty religiously.
Mm-hmm.
So my fats vary from, I think on my super high carb days that are, I think my fats go down as low as 45-ish, to on a low carb day. I think the highest that my fats have ever been in a day is 117 grams. So it varies.
That's pretty good variance.
Yeah, day to day. So
very interesting. Going back to Smart Prime, there was something interesting. There was a previous guest I had on the podcast who was the head of marketing for Corey Krill Oil. And one of their big things is that they have research showing that krill oil is more effectively absorbed on a per gram basis compared to regular omega-3 fish oil. I would be curious to see a study done taking krill oil and comparing it to Smart Prime enhanced regular omega-3 fish oils, just to see if that would almost, make those a little bit more comparable or similar. I mean, they're both effective. The byproduct of the claims behind the krill oil is that it's got phosphatidylcholine in it, so it's got the PC component, so it's more readily incorporated into cells as that phospholipid. But given the way that what Smart Prime can do, I'd be curious to see if those effects are, pretty much neutralized by the combination of Smart Prime with omega-3 fatty acids or regular fish oil supplements.
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that, and this is, again, this is due to consumer naivety, but Smart Prime does not enhance the absorption of omega. So I think that's where a lot of, like, when you hear omega optimizer, everyone's like, oh, so so it basically is like a omega-3 specific estrogen. I said no, it's not what it is at all. Obviously when you're looking at like phospholipid forms of fatty acids, like krill, in cell membrane incorporation is much more effective. But one of the things that what makes Smart Prime so effective in that regard is the fact that you have this D5 desaturase inhibitor. Now, what we found is that when for D5D to be activated, you have to have an omega-6 and an omega-3. So blanket blocking of D5D would actually lower EPA levels. So what we found is that sesamin is a selective D5D inhibitor, and that it only targets the omega-6 side of the enzyme. So what you're finding is you're seeing dihomo GLA or DGLA is not being converted to arachidonic acid, which DGLA itself has anti-inflammatory and benefits, which is awesome. And then on top of it, now you still are getting your omega-3, conversion. So you're getting EPA production from elongase to D5D. The next point would be, in terms of where the next step goes is now that you're getting those omegas into, omega-3s are being made and your omega-6s are not being made essentially, or at least arachidonic acid is not. What's happening now is they're going into a storage mechanism. Well, that storage mechanism is phosphatidylethylamine, or PE, right? So PE is more of a storage, doesn't really do much. And it's actually funny. Ryan and I were talking on Monday that there's actually some newer research coming out that specifically LPE, or lysophosphatidylethanolamine 18-0, is associated with pain, meaning increased pain.
Right.
So where, what makes this unique is, we had this conversation with a company, and they're like, oh, well, we use Sesamin already for that reason. I said, okay, well, that's great, but here's what SmartPrime does is the next step. So the reason why we put a methyl donor in there, MSM, and the patent covers pretty much every methyl donor out there. Yeah. But we found MSM to be a very unique, you're getting a sulfur donor and a methyl donor all in one. Right. But that having that methylation ability helps with that repackaging into that PC format, right? So basically what's happening is, like, you're having this pool of omega-3s increasing and minimizing the omega-6 pool. Right. Even through diet, again, in kind of like anecdotal pilot, information, we found, 60% of the subjects had drastic improvements in omega-3 index. And that with no change in diet. So that's part of the claim there, but being able to methylate it, or methylate, having a methyl donor in there helps with that repackaging into, PC. And what's really funny is, independent of all of this, one of my research papers was on essentially why DHA doesn't do what it's touted to do. I think a lot of people think like, oh, DHA is brain. It's the, it actually doesn't get incorporated as well as we think. And that's because in phospholipid form, DHA is not stable in the primary form or position. So, right. So phospholipids have two heads, or two tails, I should say, right? Yeah. So you got two. So you have an SN1 position, and SN2 position. So in the SN2 position, I think, don't correct. I got to go back and I can't remember, but my logic here makes sense. So in the one position, that's the form that it gets converted to immediately, is not stable. It migrates to the other position within 20 to 30 minutes of forming, and which is not the brain's preferred position in the phospholipid form to start to actually, incorporate and take in uptake into the brain. Yeah. So, so that's another piece of it. I think that, like, if you're looking at long-term, innovation for omega-3s, finding a way to stabilize DHA in the proper, phospholipid position will be, extremely advantageous. But, now you're finding you're getting, if it's in a PE format, it's not going to do what it needs to do. And again, as I said, with 18-0, LPE 18-0, it could be actually deleterious, and causing pain. Correct. So indirectly, and again, this is entirely theoretical and anecdotal, but SmartPrime could help with pain management as well. Through modulation of LPE 18.0.
Yeah, and in addition to optimizing that omega-6, omega-3 range and decreasing systemic inflammation through that other separate mechanism too.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I think we really are just kind of scratching the surface on SmartPrime. I think there's a lot more that over time that we'll start to prove and look at. But yeah, I mean I was just super fascinated from the beginning, just mechanistically, and just over time has continued to be like, wow, man, this is this could be a really big game changer.
Cool. When you're pitching this to brands, how are you suggesting they incorporate it into their arsenal? Standalone, packaged, like obviously it's got the omega-3 kind of air about it. So do you tell them to package it with the omega-3 supplement? Does it require a fat carrier? Just this is for the listeners' benefit in case they're not as familiar with this since it's a little bit newer. Is it something you can put into a multivitamin, or do you need to have that lipid, carrier with it? Obviously, if you take it with a meal, you're going to have fats there anyway. So joint formula maybe could it work in that context too, since MSM is also a common joint ingredient?
Yeah, so actually if you saw Soul Performance Solus joint care that just came out, that has SmartPrime in it, and this is the whole theoretical pain management side thing that kind of came about this week through discussion. So that's another added benefit you can say. Potentially, we obviously have to prove that, but theoretically that, it could do that. So joint care is, a great spot for it. Actually, we've formulated it into a greens formula, for omega, for a way to at least improve omega-3 index. Actually something that we're doing on the NutraShure side is we're going to be selling bulk soft gels that contain per soft gel 500 milligrams of omega-3s and 250 milligrams of SmartPrime. So ideally the dose would be 2 a day.
Right.
And this is more towards, again, going back to the whole consumers understand omega-3 index. So if my omega-3 index improves, then I'm getting healthier. Again, there's so much more that SmartPrime does, but let's start with, think about probiotics, for example. Right. When probiotics first kind of started coming out, you're like, oh, I just need something for gut health. But now we're, as time went on, we're finding that probiotics have a much larger role in so many other different places.
Yep.
And each different strain does something different. But we had to start with something that the consumers can fully understand first. So yes, first thing is, hey, let's talk about omega-3 index. Yep. That's kind of where we're focused on. But hey, you're going to get all these other things. Our long-term goal is that through time, we'll be able to continue to educate the consumer that SmartPrime does a heck of a lot more for you. In liver health, there's kind of like, that's a big thing for Dr. Yates is, he's a big one on liver care, and, trying to, like how I said, like where my beliefs are in chronic low grade inflammation are the kind of like the key to wellness and a problem for health and aging and whatnot. His is liver health. That's his belief, and not saying like he's wrong, because I agree with him.
Right.
His whole thing is like, look, if we can fix the liver, you can fix a lot of things. Yeah. And so that's kind of, where his passion is and where he sees SmartPrime really going, is getting into that liver side and optimizing it through that. But this also incorporates, omega-3 optimization from that.
Yeah. I'm going to need to get his contact information from you after we get off this podcast, because I think that would be a fascinating topic. Just, I enjoy bourbon, but I'm also getting more into like the organ health, joint health thing, just in my own progression as a supplement enthusiast, formulator, amateur researcher and all of that stuff. And so we've yet to have a guest on the podcast that is really steeped into organ health. I'm also just curious, like I'm just spitballing. I wonder if he's got any roots or enthusiasm for like traditional Chinese medicine and those like Ayurveda arts, and because they have a lot of belief that a lot of everything starts in the liver or, the kidneys, and that kind of permeates out from there for total body health. So that'll be a fun a thing. So if he's open to that, I don't know if he does podcasts or anything, but we'll see.
Yeah, I won't take his thunder, but you'll be surprised. So you get him going, man. He can he will talk for sure.
Good.
So.
I've got a litany of stuff in my pantry that I want to run by just to get his thoughts on it, just based on my cursory reading of the literature and whatnot. In wrapping things up here, Brandon, first off, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a bunch of different balls that you're juggling at the same time, working from home, wife, baby, PhD classes, all that other good stuff. So thank you immensely for the time. What else would you like to say in closing, or do a pitch for anything?
Yeah, well, so I wanted to really just kind of like mention, what our portfolio is. So obviously, about 3D Pump, about Caraflame, about SmartPrime, but also we are the exclusive global distributor now of Beta Prime as well. And we're the North American distributor for Polynol, which that one is super interesting and unique. Yes, we can sit here and say, oh, it's another antioxidant, but it's crazy, like all these different mechanisms that have been shown to work. I mean, one of the things that, targets inflammation from 3 different mechanisms of action, looking at cosmeceutical benefits. I mean, the list goes on with Polynol, and then also Vital SPM. Basically, those are it's specialized pro-resolving mediators. Those are basically the downstream metabolites of omega-3s. These are what ultimately are doing a lot of the benefit. So that's another one that, we have, we have it. But, the powder one, which is where I think that'll have a lot of application and easier to use than the oil, probably still a few months away from on that. 3D Pump, I can't wait for the study to come out. I think this is, realistically, if brands aren't really getting on board with 3D Pump yet, they're going to miss out. Now's the time to do it before the study publishes. As Bruce kind of alluded to, he's excited for that to, if it were up to him, I think we probably already announced it.
Oh yeah.
So, and I think that's kind of the, what's great is when you look at the load of actual active material in there, going against a full 8 grams. One of the things that was kind of brought up was, the adverse event side of things. Well, what I think a lot of people, especially on the formulation side, and which makes sense as to why, when you look at these ridiculously high citrulline doses, the absorption of free-form amino acids is slower than peptides for one, right? So when you're overloading it, and citrulline's uptake is I think it's like 83%. But it also is competitively transported with the same transporter as beta alanine. Yeah. So, so you're sitting here, you got products out there that are 10 grams of citrulline and 6.4 grams of beta alanine. You got like 16 grams of free form amino acids. Not to mention that during exercise, motility is slowed way down. So this is no wonder that you're getting all this cardio to the bathroom with, with very large doses of citrulline, especially in combination with beta alanine.
And for a third factor, they don't use enough water. Either people are trying to dry scoop it, or they're mixing up a 26-gram scoop in 6 to 8 ounces of water, and it's just going to sit in your gut. So sorry, but that's yet another reason. Yeah.
So and when you look at 6 grams of 3D Pump, it's far lower, and obviously it's 6 grams, but it's really only like a little over 4.5 grams of actives, right? Some of it is for flow agents and whatnot, and carriers for the spray drying. So really, it's a much lower load. You're talking at almost half of the load of what L-citrulline is, and you're reducing your adverse event reporting by 50%. I mean, to me, it sounds like a no-brainer. Now I'm not getting as many returns. So if you look at it from a business standpoint, right? Your AEs go up. Now you're going to get returns, or you're not going to get repeat buys. You're going to have people like, oh man, that was great. I got a great cardio session on top of my weightlifting session. and I don't want everyone to buy it again. I think whereas that you don't see that happening, and I think a lot of people don't look at the adverse event reporting side of the business. And I think you can, if you took that information and actually looked at it and used it rather than just saying, okay, I'm doing my due diligence of writing it down and documenting this adverse event, and actually looked at like what is the trend of what you're seeing, and actually optimize your formulas on future formulations, then you're going to see your sales will continue to maybe that hardcore person who's like, oh yeah, if 10 grams is good, 20 grams is better, that type of mentality, you might lose that customer, but you're going to get a lot more people who want to use it because they're having it more enjoyable, they're still getting the accomplished goal. And you have substantiation of something that's unique and different. So that's my thing on my 2 cents on 3D pump, that I think a lot of people are overlooking. They're just kind of looking at it at face value, like, oh well, it's just these 3 things, but synergy of the 3 ingredients, the minimized in AE reporting and potential loss of sales there. It's a home run for the people that want to take advantage of it.
Agreed. And just to recap, we can do a brief overview. You mentioned Beta Prime and Polynol, but what are those for the listeners that may not be familiar with those 2 ingredients yet?
Yeah. So Beta Prime is a complexing of 3 ingredients as well. Celastrus, jujube extract, and theanine. So what the patents on those one is a significant reduction in paresthesia from beta alanine. One of the challenges with beta alanine is you really don't see results for like 8 weeks of consistent use, right? It's like creatine. You need to take it daily, not just pre-workout. I mean, sure, it's great. Like, oh, I'm starting to itch, it's time to go to the gym. Like, right? Like you have consumers that use that as like their signal of like, hey, this is now it's working. My pre-workout's going.
Oh yeah.
But in reality, like you're not getting the actual athletic benefits.
Right.
What you would be able to do with using Beta Prime in conjunction with beta alanine is taking a higher dose. So you can almost do like that whole like old school creatine loading phase with beta alanine. So you get carnosine levels to be fully saturated. You're not like going to be burning and itching for 20, 30 minutes to an hour or more. And make it tolerable to where you can load with that, or just reduce the paresthesia at the lower dosage as well. Not to mention it from a cognitive perspective, right? Beta Prime actually, all 3 ingredients have long-term cognitive benefits as well. So not and acute, both. So not just long-term.
Correct. Yeah. Especially L-theanine's got calming benefits, and Celastrus has got stuff that works via the acetylcholine pathways for longer, better learning, memory, focus, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's another area of opportunity for Beta Prime, above and beyond from the performance side. And then Polynol is a polyphenol rich sugarcane extract. So it's, derived from sugarcane. But believe it or not, if you taste it, you would say this is not sugar. It's got some bitterness to it. But again, this thing, it's, the mechanism, like they've done a ton of different cell studies for different mechanisms. And you're talking at inflammation, aging, performance, endothelial health, cosmeceutical benefits. I mean, you name it, like there's a ton of, and I think probably the harder part with Polynol is how do we narrow the focus down of, ideally what we're looking to do, including even gut health benefits with this. As a matter of fact, the protocol was just recently sent over to me, and potentially looking at gut health benefits along with antioxidant benefits, with Polynol. So pretty excited about that one again as well. Just again, mechanistically, this is something very different than what you see in a lot of polyphenols out there.
Agreed. Fascinating stuff. Well, I'm excited to see what else y'all have in the works. I've been privy to see some of it, but there's still a whole lot more I haven't seen. So I'm very excited to see what y'all have coming. Thank you again for the time today. And which is your preferred way to be contacted, if any? Because we do have brand owners that listen to this outside of just regular consumers. So what's the best way to get in touch with y'all for working together?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me via email. It's B Sojka, so my last name, Sojka, at NutraShure.com. Or you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Instagram. Again, not very popular there, but I do have an Instagram. You can hit up the NutraShure page as well. That either way works. So whatever's easiest way of communication, I will respond either way.
Awesome. All right, Brandon, thank you for a great podcast and have a great rest of the week.
All right. Awesome. I appreciate it, Robert. Thanks so much.
All right.